Morning, guys. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. There's a few people still jumping on here. Just give it just a few more seconds and we'll get started. All right, it's 9:03. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to start off by just saying good morning to everybody. Hope everybody's having a good morning. I want to take some time to let you know who I am. I see some new people on here I haven't heard of before. So let me introduce myself. I'm Brian Thompson. I have been in the HVAC industry for about 30 plus years. Been working with M&A for over 5. M&A started back in 1969, and I just want to tell y'all that this is a great company to work for, and we got some great people around us. We're partnering up with some great people. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of the M&A family. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about A2L's steps for success. The goal of this training is to increase your awareness of the A2L refrigerants that we will be using in modern HVAC equipment. We're going to be covering a review of safety, transportation, handling, installation, as well as service and best practices for the refrigerant. I've got Matt over here. Matt Barber is one of our TMs helping me on the call. So if this is y'all's presentation, if y'all have any questions, just go to the chat box and just put them in the chat and we'll answer them as we go. I've got also Floyd Lively from Marine will be here. So if we have any questions I can't answer, he'll be on here to help us answer those questions too. So the goal of this is to make y'all aware of what's going on. You know, change is coming, guys. We just got to start using best practices. For guys that already use the best practice, it's going to be a little bit easier change. The webinar will be broken down into these individual agenda items and over of A2Ls, how the refrigerant is applied to comfort cooling. We will dispel myths and deliver some facts about some refrigerants. We'll talk about refrigerant cylinders, installation, and best practices, and we'll be covering safety. The webinar will be broken down into these individual agenda items. We'll be going over the overview, how the refrigerant is applied to comfort cooling. We'll dispel myths and deliver some facts about the refrigerant. We'll talk about refrigerant cylinders, insulation, and safety. So what is a refrigerant? Refrigerant is a chemical compound of repeatedly changing states from a liquid to a vapor and back to a liquid while maintaining chemical stability. It has a relative high latent heat carrying capacity and low boiling point. So refrigerants are better. Some refrigerants are better than others for the environment, and that's what brings us here today. This slide highlights the difference between the HFCs and the CFCs/HCFCs. The Montreal protocol was introduced first, and that was to phase out the CFC refrigerants because they had a very high ozone depletion, which could lead to holes in the ozone. So we're allowing more heat to enter our planet. And the glycol amendment is focused on potential substance to reduce the amount of ozone in the atmosphere that blocks harmful radiation from the sun. Here are some of the refrigerants we have used in the refrigerant industry today and why they have been phased out. Notice that CFCs were introduced back in the 30s, like R12. It had a high ODP and a high GWP. In the 50s, HCFCs were introduced, like R22, and they had a low ODP but still had a high GWP. So now we're moving to the HFCs, which is a 454B. We went to 410A, now we're going to 454B. So that B at the end, the capital letter at the end, was going to tell you that that is a blend. I know everybody's scared of change. We've already changed freons 3 times in this industry, 4 times. So, you know, it's coming. This is what we're looking at. We should start getting our equipment in probably no later than November 1st. It should be seeing it coming into our warehouse. The key thing about the chart on the right is to note that the refrigerant classes as A series are lower toxicity and better option than B series refrigerant like ammonia. The lower the number following the letter explains its flammability. A2Ls are low toxicity and are classified as mildly flammable. Throughout this presentation, we'll cover just how hard it is to ignite them. Many people are confusing A2Ls with the A3s. The A3s are hydrocarbon like propane and very flammable. This slide shows how R410A solved the ODP issue, but did not address the GWP issue. So R54B has a 0 ODP and a very low GWP of 466. Standards require refrigerants have a GWP of less than 750, and that's what brought us here. And this is why RuudA has chosen to go with the 454B. If they change again, you know, they say they want it lower, then we're going to have to go down to another refrigerant. So we chose the R454B. OEMs, most OEMs are going to this. We will have a few, probably our mini splits. Anything mini split is probably going to be still R32. So that's just what they've had overseas for years and years that they've been using. So that's probably what they're going to stick with. If you look at R22, it had a GWP of 1810, but a 0.50 on ODP. So ozone depletion now for the 410, we got rid of that, but our GWP was still high. So then we took the 410 and we went down to 454B, which has 0 ozone depletion, but still has the lowest global warming potentials. So that's why we chose this. Most of the refrigerants we use today are not single elements, but a blend of 2 or more refrigerants. A blend contains 2 or more refrigerants, but these refrigerants may boil at different temperatures. Slides compare 410A, R32, and R454B. What covers lots of technical data. The main item to highlight is the reduction of GWP. The fact that A2L refrigerants are more efficient than 410A. RuudA has chosen 454 for the primary. Like I said, some R32 will be in our mini splits. They're a lot more efficient, so we're 12% more efficient against 410A with the 454B. A2L refrigerants are not new, guys. These have been in our industry for a while. We've been using them in our automobiles, comfort cooling, and small appliances. This slide also shows that A3 refrigerants are used in both refrigeration and comfort cooling and have great results because the safety protocols are there. HFC refrigerants like 454B offer another benefit over HFC refrigerants. They can only survive in the atmosphere for 11 days, meaning they break down quickly, reducing global warming. R32 is less than 5 years. The R125 that's in 410A lasts for 29 years. So breakdown of 410A, that was R32, and it was mixed with R125, which made your 410A. Now we're doing 125, and we're pairing it with the 1234YF, and that's going to be your 454B. You got any questions so far? All right. So this presentation is addressing comfort cooling. We are not discussing refrigerant equipment. We are talking about the two primary refrigerants being R32 and 454B. The RuudA family products primary refrigerant will be the 454B. The slide states that the key points of R54 show some of the reasons it is primary refrigerant for RuudA. Same oil, it's got the lowest GWP, and it's close in pressure and performance of the 410A. If you look at the slide on the left, it's going to show you R22, R410, and R54B. If you look at R410 versus 54B, we're within 20 PSI lower than the 410A. And on our high side, we're going to be 110 degrees. We're going to be within that 20 PSI lower.
Hey, Brian, can you go back a slide?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to jump in just for a second. For those on the call today that went, through the change when we changed from R22 to 410A, that was a really large change for our industry. It was inclusive as far as, okay, now we're going to have to change our hoses, our gauges. We're going to have to change a whole bunch of stuff because the pressures went in this scenario right here. We're going from a 68 PSI G pressure for that temperature, and we jumped up to 118 for 410A, and now we're starting to back down just a little bit, going to the 454B. So there's a lot of myths around, I've got to change everything because this is going to be a drastic change to the industry. This isn't a drastic change compared to what we've seen back from that R22 days to the 410A days. So I really wanted to point that out specifically for this slide. Again, the reason why RuudA went to the 454B is because we're fairly lower, a little bit lower as far as pressures go than what you're going to see, today with the 410A refrigerants. So sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
No, great point. Thanks, Floyd. So here's some myths and some facts. So the A2L refrigerants are likely to cause a fire. That's a myth. There are no hydrocarbons in A2L refrigerants. That's a fact. A lot of people think there's propane in this. That's a fact. There's no hydrocarbons. The amount of A2L refrigerant needed in the air to ignite is much higher than the amount needed for A3L refrigerants. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to ignite A2L refrigerant compared to the A3, and we're going to show some of that in some of these slides we have coming up. If an ignition event takes place, A2Ls have a very, very lazy flame. So as soon as that heat source goes away, that flame goes out and dies down too. So LFL, lower flammability limits, it is the lowest concentrated refrigerant expressed in the amount of grams of refrigerant needed per cubic meter of air for ignition to even take place. So in this one, we got minimum ignition energy, MIE, we'll be talking about. This definition, minimum energy is takes to ignite a fuel air mixture. Notice how much higher the MIE is for the 454B compared to the R290. What we are saying here is the higher the MIE, the lower the risk of ignition for this event to take place. The burning is the speed at which the flame propagates relative to the unburned gas. The burning velocity is propane is 46 centimeters per second, while R54B is low at 5.2 centimeters per second, making it a very, very, very lazy flame. Heat of combustion is how much heat is released when the refrigerant has been ignited. Notice how much lower the heat of combustion is for the 454B compared to R290. The lower the HOC, the lower the risk of ignition even taking place. This is the findings of a HRI report number 8017, which shows various ignition sources and how R32 and 1234YF reacts to these ignition sources. R454B is not specially called out in this chart because it is a mixture of both R32 and 1234YF. So here's the results when a lit cigarette is put in contact with the refrigerant. Mole fracture is just a way of expressing the concentration of substance in the case refrigerant in the space, simply meaning conditions were at near perfect state for combustion and it did not ignite. Here are the results when a lighter is put in contact with the refrigerant. Again, conditions were near perfect to take place. In this example, when the conditions were just right for ignition, a barbecue lighter could not ignite the flame. Here are the results when the electric cord was plugged in and unplugged while in contact with the refrigerant. No ignition took place. On this example, we got electric mixer. The sparks created by the mixer could not ignite the flames. A grinding wheel was used with a flint. Running the drill with a grinding wheel across the flint created a continuous spark, and this continuous spark could not ignite the refrigerant. Here we see a 16-watt, 110-volt hair dryer could not ignite the flame. We got heating elements from two-sided toasters. No flame. All these are in perfect condition, guys. Heat from an electric burner could not ignite the flame. The refrigerant, even though the conditions were just right. Here was a ceramic heater running at 170 degrees, 338 degrees Fahrenheit, could not ignite the refrigerant. The goal of this slide is to show that even though these devices are exposed to the A2L refrigerant at conditions nearly perfect, we could not ignite the flame. One of the concerns and myths that we have is if a cylinder gets too hot, the ruptured disc will blow, filling up my truck and causing an explosion. The fact is A2L cylinders do not use a ruptured disc. A2L cylinders use a pressure relief valve. When the pressure in the cylinder exceeds 600 psi, the valve will open, releasing refrigerant unit until the pressures have dropped and below the 600 mark.
So, Brian, let me chime in just for a quick second here, if that's okay.
Yep.
So picture A1 at the very top. So traditionally, when our jug of refrigerant is empty, it's been standard practice to go ahead and take your awl or a screwdriver, whatever device that you would use to puncture that out. That way, if you're taking it to a recycler, or however you dispose of your empty containers, that's traditionally how we prove that container is empty by going through that process of puncturing that out and putting a hole there. So as we're moving into A2L refrigerants and you're looking at the safety device that's on this particular jug, whether it's a recovery jug or whether it's a brand new jug that you're going to get from M&A Supply, we don't want you to do that any longer, because that pressure relief, it does have springs and it does have moving parts that are underneath there. And the last thing that we want is for a technician to puncture that out. And then all of a sudden you're getting a face full of springs and a face full of debris and stuff. Later in the presentation, it'll show you exactly where our recommendation is to be able to vent that empty jug or refrigerant out for disposal purposes. But just be aware of that there is some mechanical stuff that's underneath there.
Very good. Thanks, Lloyd. The concerns come up because our 454 refrigerant that is a subject to fractuation. However, the temperature glide is low. That means we can top off this refrigerant. We do not have to recover, recycle. We can top it off just like we did 410A. Another myth that they had is I have to take another EPA test. A2Ls are regulated by the EPA, but there is no additional certification needed. Those holding an EPA Section 608 certification will be grandfathered in and will not need to take an additional exam.
Yeah, Brian, one more time, let me chime in on that one too. So for those that follow social media, there's a lot of hype out there saying that it's required that you do take another exam. And that is a myth. You do not have to take another exam. However, if you want to get continuing education, there's nothing wrong with doing an exam, going through a class, so forth and so on. I don't want to get down into the weeds too deep on that. But again, this is a conversation that I have quite a few times, that folks, again, when they get on social media or they receive emails from certain organizations that say that it's required, it is not a requirement that you have to take that, an extra step through the APA process.
Very good. So a lot of people are saying, hey, I got to buy new tools. Well, yeah, we're going to have to buy some, but there's a lot of tools that are already qualified. Like I said, this is not new. This Freon's not new. They've been using it overseas for a while. A lot of our field piece and some of our other digital gauges, you can call the manufacturers and get with them to see if it needs to be updated. Some of these can be updated, so just check with them and see what you need to do if it's not on there. Just a quick look at some of the tools. For the A2Ls, we'll see most of the same, and many of the tools you're currently using could be used with A2Ls. Like I said, check with your manufacturers, see if yours qualify. I can add A2L refrigerant to systems designed for A1 refrigerants. The fact is, A2L refrigerants will not be used in new equipment designed for A2L refrigerants. Will only be used. They are not to be used in existing A1 systems. The following components have been redesigned for use with the A2L refrigerants. Good thing about this, guys, we'll be using less Freon in these units, so to fill them up because of the compound of the refrigerant. We got any questions at all while we're here?
No, Brian, I did put a video in the chat. If you ever want to play that, you're more than welcome to. It's not a RuudA2L video. It's something that we were able to find on the internet that actually it comes from overseas, and it literally shows the ignition attempt for A2L refrigerants. Again, you don't have to play it for this training event, but it is available if you want to watch it at your leisure.
All right. Might play that at the end of it for sure. Super test refrigerant flammability test. Okay. Nice. Thank you, sir. All refrigerant cylinders will be moving to a gray cylinder with the refrigeration number stamped on them. Based on AHRI guidelines, this is not new to A2Ls. It was decided on 2017 what is new for A2L cylinders, and it will have a red stripe across the bottom, and it will have left-handed threads, guys. So you will need an adapter for that.
Yeah, so let me say that loud. um, During the training events that I have, when we say left-handed threads, then folks generally ask the question, okay, does that mean the equipment? No, the equipment that you're going to receive that is A2L, the 454B, it's going to have connectors on, Schraders, all of that is going to be right-handed threads. Those are all going to be the same. So nothing on the equipment itself changes. However, on the recovery jugs and on the brand new refrigerant itself, so if you go to M&A and you buy a brand new jug of 454B, that's going to be left-handed threads. So go to the next slide real quick, Brian. And that second picture from the left, that is a picture of what a left-handed thread to right-handed thread adapter will look like. So that, just want to clarify that the recovery jugs and the new refrigerant jugs, again, brand new refrigerant jugs that you get from M&A, those will have left-handed threads for the 454B refrigerants. The equipment is just like you're used to working with today.
Very good. There are no requirements for service vehicles to use hazmat flak guards. Transportation of A2L refrigerant will remain the same. Currently, the rule is that the A2Ls must be stored upright, but it has been tested and the cylinders in the horizontal position. So you can put these in the horizontal position now, but you need the valve facing at a 12 o'clock position.
Yeah, the valve being the relief valve, guys. As you're putting it in your racks inside your vans, your vehicles and stuff, you always want that pressure relief valve to be at the very top. That way, if it was to ever go off, then you would be venting out vapor and not liquid into your service vehicle. And again, we've had these cylinders in Arizona, out in the desert, to where internal temperature inside of a vehicle gets way up above 100 degrees, and we haven't seen one of these vent yet. But again, we're always going to err on being proactive and being cautious. So again, 12 o'clock just for that relief valve at the very top. Then we're going to relieve, if it does relieve, vapor versus liquid.
Nice. Similar to disposal cylinders, recovery cylinders will have a red band across the top. Never fill the tank more than 80%. There's a formula for that. If you look at the top of that cylinder, 47.6 times 0.80 equals 38.8 plus the 16.6 will give you how much you got water capacity in your cylinder. Procedures you use today for insulation is similar to using 410A. Guys, we can use the same line set as long as they're clean and clear. No holes in them. Want to make sure we're cutting the copper. We're not unwelding it. We need to flow nitrogen through it whenever we are welding. So that's going to change a little bit of people's practices, which we should be doing today, is flowing nitrogen through everything we weld.
So let me chime in one more time on that too.
Yep.
So you guys are more than welcome to come off of mute and make a comment. So how many of you guys use R11 flush? You can chime in if you want to. If not, then got it. Okay. I mean, there's certain situations where you have to use, some flush. RuudA's stance is we don't want you using the flush, but hey, I get it. I was a contractor for several years myself. The key message that I want to give you, and I know that this is being recorded, so this is going to come back and haunt me, is if you're using the flush, get the flush completely out of the system. The flush is meant to strip all of the crap out of the line sets, right? So if you're leaving any of that in the line sets, then all of a sudden you're going to introduce that flush into the new system, which is going to basically destroy the oil, the POE oil in the system. You're going to have a compressor failure. So if you're going to use the flush, make damn sure that you get it completely out of the system. Because if you leave a little bit of that in there, that's going to be really, really hard on a brand new system. So I'll just leave it at that.
Or you can go ahead and get that Hillmore gun, put some nitrogen in it, and blow them pegs right through there.
Yes. Yes, we're trying to get those in. Actually, 2 M&A, so y'all are a big part if we get them or not. So just if anybody wants them, let us know. So I like them. They work pretty well.
Yeah, I got
Yes.
2 of them. One for my left hand and my right hand. One for my suction and my liquid.
All right.
And I'm assuming Kevin Crabtree, since he's on this call, he's going to send me a set, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, I'll go back on mute. Sorry, Brian.
All right. Striker plates must be used when installing. Same thing as we've done before. We got to protect from nails and screw punctures. We got to check our local national codes. Service valve connections may vary between manufacturers. Service ports will be marked red for identification. Image for sample purpose only. Style of marketing may vary. So we're gonna have a red peg on there. You know, we got to change the dryer just like we always have in the past. Need to pressurize the unit. And this is going to be very important with this is to make sure we don't have any leaks. So it's recommended for 500 PSI. I get this question all the time. 500 PSI for 60 minutes, guys. Make sure we don't have a leak. Said best practices. Flushing the line set. Just make sure we get all the oil and debris out of there before we use it. Use a regulator. Hopefully we can get some of them in, Kevin, is these regulators that show PSI where you're brazing would be nice to have. The liquid line dryers, anytime we break the system open, anytime it's open to the atmosphere, we need to change that dryer out. So all 400 series refrigerant must be charged as a liquid. Guys, this liquid charge adapter is a great feature that you can put on here so we don't slug that compressor down. I know a lot of times when we start to put our Freon in, we're just opening up the gauges and we're just dumping it in as fast as we can. You can hear that compressor start moaning and it don't like it. So it's a good adapter to have in your truck. Superheat should be checked to verify proper system, and we want to charge with subcoolant at the end. Superheat calculations, suction line temperature, low side saturation temperature, you can find on your gauge. Subcoolants, high side saturation temperature, and liquid line temperature. They do have digital gauges that automatically do that for you now. Very recommended. This is a great chart. I have it on my deal. If you want to use this app, it's a PT calculator. It's a great app that can be used to check pressure temperature relations for refrigerants. This slide shows that you can select refrigerant input pressure and see what your saturation temperature is. Very neat chart. The app can simplify the process by superheat subcooling button across the app. On the screen, the user selects the Freon, enters the pressures, and it'll calculate the superheat and subcooling for you. Use an A2L approved vacuum pump. So we want to make sure that we have A2L vacuum pump. I know most guys are not going to do this, but it's recommended to triple evacuate a system. People are like, why do that? Why we triple evacuate? Well, we hold moisture in, and whenever moisture is in a vacuum, a lot of times if you don't break it with nitrogen, if you take I've taken a bottle before and I filled it up with a little bit of water and you're pulling vacuum, it'll start freezing. That water will freeze in there and you can't get any more vacuum out. Well, once you break it with nitrogen, it's pushing that water out, and then you do it again and you're getting all the moisture out of the system. Triple evacuation is very, very important. The process of evacuating the system has not changed. The system must be evacuated to 500 microns. The only way to confirm that 500 microns has been reached is by a micron gauge. You cannot really use the 29.92 on analog gauges. Once it gets there, if your gauges are a little bit off, you're probably not there on 500, especially bouncing around in your truck. So recovery, all technicians working with A2L refrigerant must be EPA certified. To recover refrigerant, the recovery machine and tank must be certified for use with A2Ls. Many recovery machines have been tested and approved to work with A2L refrigerants. Just get with your manufacturers. Like I said, don't overcharge the recovery tanks. A2L refrigerants will still use the POE oil like we have with the 410A. Like Floyd pointed out, let's make sure we're getting all the flush if we're using flush out of there. Vacuum pumps will not remove moisture from POE oil. I mean, it's POE oil attracts moisture, so to get that vacuum pump down, we got to get it down to 500 micron triple evacuation. Some of the leak detectors we have nowadays will do the A2Ls. Bill Peace has one. They've got quite a few of them out there. Just check to make sure it is from your manufacturer. Can do A2L refrigerants. Safety remove refrigerants following local and national codes is required. We should be doing most of this stuff anyway. Leak tests, pressure tests, system evacuation. Just got to make sure that we're using our best practices, guys. We have to do that. So A2L, yeah, it's mildly flammable. We kind of proved that it's not just going to blow up in your face. We can use in new equipment only. Let's follow our instruction guides in our books. So use that. Keep track of refrigerant charge. I like knowing what size line set I got. So whenever I put a line set in, I usually cut off whatever 50 foot, cut it off, then I mark it on the inside so I know how long the line set I got. That way, if I come back later and need to do a charge, we can weight charge it in, make sure I charge it right. What are equipment manufacturers doing? Minimizing refrigerant charge size. All manufacturers will be taking steps to ensure products utilizing A2L refrigerants are safe for service and installation. This includes reducing the overall refrigerant charge. Part of what allows us to do this is by reducing the size of tube in our condenser coils. We went to 7 millimeter. So less charge in these things. Now we're going to have leak detectors in there, guys. So if we get a leak, the sensors will lock out the compressor and it'll energize the fan. When a leak is detected, it'll prevent the buildup of refrigerant within the space. Now, as the refrigerant goes away, the unit can fire back up and start running again. But if it starts filling up and we get to a leak detection, it will shut it down and turn on your fan. Floyd, you want to go over this wiring guide?
Well, here, let me give you about a 30,000 foot view of it. So anytime that because the wiring diagram is going to be different, whether it's a air handler or whether it's going to be a case coil. Know that RuudA2L sells our case coils and our air handlers with the A2L sensor that's going to be installed. I'm not sure if Kevin and team are going to bring in some units that don't have the A2L sensor in it. If the A2L sensor is not already installed in it, then it'll be a an accessory that can be purchased separately. I'm assuming that M&A will more than likely bring all of their equipment in and have those sensors in, but I'll leave that to Kevin to speak to that. Regarding the wiring diagram, again, this is kind of an eye chart, and the purpose of the A2L sensor is once we detect a leak has occurred, then the RDS, the refrigerant detection system, the sensor itself, along with the relay, is going to shut the outdoor unit off, and it's going to bring the fan on continuously until the RDS system is cleared. In other words, the leak is no longer detected. At that point, we're going to go back to normal operations. Again, I could explain this chart to you and give you where Y1, Y2 goes, and R and G, and how that all wires up. But I really wanted to explain how the system actually works.
Hey, Floyd, on the coil, so say somebody's got a fairly new coil, but for whatever reason we got to go to a 454B outdoor unit. Is there a conversion like a TXV and adding one of these sensors that they can use the existing coil, or will they have to put a new coil in every time we swap to a 454B condenser?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the notes that I made that I wanted to make clear. So it's got to be A2L rated from indoor unit to outdoor unit. So if, for instance, if you had a furnace that was installed and let's just say it's an M furnace or an M1 furnace, and then you wanted just to change the AC portion of it, you could go to a 454B outdoor unit with a matching indoor coil that has the AHRI rating. And then of course, you'll have that sensor that would wire into that existing furnace. But to answer your question, yes, whatever the indoor air coil, whatever that coil is on the inside, that has to be rated with that outdoor unit.
What about the blowers?
That's a big question. Can you expand a little bit more on that question?
I mean, if you've got an old furnace with a PSC blower, can you use this air conditioner with it?
Well, that's a big question. So it would depend on whether that outdoor unit is single stage or two stage and how that PSC motor would be wired. I mean, there's multiple ways that you could wire. And again, I don't want to get us down a rabbit hole. If you have an existing furnace, that you could wire two stages of airflow to match the outdoor unit. And again, if that outdoor unit and that coil had a coil only rating, then yes, potentially you could do that match. But again, I would need to know what the particulars are as far as that furnace before I could give you a yes, you can do that. No, you can't.
There are some cases though where you can use a PSC blower.
There are cases today. If you have a two-stage outdoor unit for a M1 product and you have a single stage indoor unit, you would have to configure that indoor unit to operate at two stages of airflow to make that successful. There's ways that you could do that. And if you get with Brian could explain that a little bit deeper in details.
Okay.
So just remember, some of our package units may have more than one sensor installed. They will be wired in series. Just depends what systems we have. When a unit has an economizer, it will move to a minimum open position when a leak is detected for our commercial units. What y'all need to know: Always follow proper installation procedures. Ventilated work areas, purge line sets before brazing. So we want to make sure we're purging. Braze with nitrogen flowing. Mark the total refrigerant charge on the required label and record refrigerant related service work. Ensure leak detection sensors are properly installed and are operating. Never bypass the sensor, guys. Always weigh in your charge. Always use OEM parts. Stay educated and train your staff on proper procedures. We will have a lot of classes coming up here in the near future, so hopefully we'll get more into this. We just want to make sure that we're doing everything proper, guys. A2L equipment best practice. Let's make sure we're getting with our manufacturers, make sure we got the right tools in place. So A2L refrigerants cannot be used as a drop-in replacement for existing A1 refrigerant systems. Is that true or false? True. Which one of the following refrigerants has the most similar operating pressure temperatures of R410A? 454. What type of oil will used in the A2L products? POE. R54B is a blended refrigerant made up of R1234YF and R32. True. Which of these items cannot ignite A2L? All the above. A2L refrigerants can only be used in systems rated for A2L refrigerants. That's true. A2L refrigerant cylinders have what color band at the top? How might A2L systems be different from A1s? All the above. 454 system refrigerant charge can be topped off after leaks are repaired. True. Refrigerant recovery tanks, A2Ls, are identified to A1 refrigerant recovery tanks. It's false. A2Ls have already been adopted and are in use in many products we have today. A2Ls are listed as mildly flammable, but they are very hard to ignite and have a very lazy flame. Installation practices, services, procedures, and handling. This is what we've got to do today, guys. I've been on some jobs where we're not using the right practices, and this is setting you up for failure. So we need to start learning our best practices and start applying them. Go ahead and play this this deal that Floyd sent video, and then we'll have some questions afterwards.
Yeah, Brian, you'll have to have internet service if you don't to be able to play it. It's a YouTube video. And again, full disclaimer, guys, this isn't our video. This is something that I thought that was really neat that I was able to find.
Are we done?
And I never could see it. It said it wasn't able, but that's not a big deal. I can find it later.
I never seen a video.
I never seen nothing.
I can't see the video.
I
No.
didn't show them again.
No video here.
All right. We got in the chat, will the new equipment have reverse threads also? That is no. The only thing that will have your reverse thread is going to be your bottles, your recovery bottle and your Freon bottles, guys. So other than that, so if you got
Why
any
did they-
questions, please let me know.
Why did they reverse the threads?
I'm imagine so that you know what you're hooking to, just kind of a thought process that you're thinking, hey, I've got this on here, double check, make sure I'm putting it in the right system. But
Okay.
Floyd might be able to answer that a little bit better.
No, you answered it correctly. It's the industry. We needed to be able to differentiate between A1 refrigerants and A2L refrigerants.
So with the coils being smaller and stuff, you said the tubings were smaller. So
Yeah,
with
so
that, is it going to be a lighter unit?
Good question. Yes.
again, so as we went from M products to M1 products, we, as far as RuudA2L, we made the change from 3/8 coils to, or excuse me, 3/8 tubing in our coils to 7 millimeters. So we've tried to make them smaller and lighter as well.
Okay. And are they still going to be aluminum or are they going to stay copper?
So outdoor units today will be copper tube and fin. Or excuse me, it'll be copper on the outside and it'll be aluminum fin. Indoor units will still be aluminum.
Okay. Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good question.
Any other questions out there?
Did you say we have to record the refrigerant on the outside unit?
It's recommended.
Yes, and that's always been a recommendation. However, we're going to have a sticker that will be on the outdoor unit. That I get it. It's within probably a year and a half, 2 years, it's going to fade away and nobody's going to know exactly what you did. So my recommendation has always been on the inside cover to help your feather, your fellow brother that's going to come behind you, especially if you have a long line set. How many ounces of refrigerant did you put in that system? Additional ounces. That way the next technician, when they're there, they realize that you put another 16 ounces or another 24 ounces in the system. Documentation, guys, is always good. Sometimes we rush through the process. We want to get the system installed. We want to get it up and running. Sometimes we don't dot our I's and cross our T's. It's always good practice to do the documentation when you're doing the commissioning.
So on the factory charge, what length line set is it recommended up to?
So I'll go ahead, Brian, if you want.
I think it's still going to be 15 foot is going to be your minimum. Is that what you're asking, John? Before you have to.
Yes.
Yeah, so
at one time it was 25 feet, and then I think Carrier went to 18, and then RuudA2L's 15. I was just wanting to know if it was going to stay. The factory charge is recommended for a 15-foot line set. That was staying there, or since we're using less refrigerant, maybe it counted as 0 line set, and then you would just kind of have to top off like some of the variable speed units would be, just have to weigh it in.
Yeah, it's still 15 foot as we move into A2L.
Great question.
Absolutely. Yep.
Anybody else? Any questions?
So will the new equipment come pre-charged, or we'll have to put the whole charge in?
They will come wet. In other words, they'll have the charge in it. And again, up to 15 foot of line set.
Gotcha.
Great questions.
Is that even on the 7.5 tons?
Commercial units will still be shipped dry. We're not changing any of those compared to what we're doing today. So here in a nutshell, guys, I'll lay it out this way. So the way that we ship products today is going to continue into the 454B, into the A2Ls. So if you have received commercial split units in the past that have been shipped dry, then those will continue to be shipped dry. Anything on the residential side, it's status quo. The big thing that's going to be the A2L sensors that you'll see. Any other questions?
Will
I mean,
there be a maintenance point on those sensors?
Ask that one more time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Will there be a maintenance point on those sensors?
As far as a maintenance procedure,
Yes.
other than just to make sure that, they are clean as you go through the process of doing your PMs, and making sure that there's nothing on the face of them as far as the sensor port, because there's some vents, and the vents aren't what you would think, to where refrigerant or airflow goes across it or anything. But there are some little bitty vents that we would want to make sure that those are clear. And Brian and I both have access to our A2L sensor training, and I think that Brian's probably going to follow this up with the A2L sensor training for his online training events and stuff, and we'll cover a little bit more on those, or on that, regarding those details.
For sure.
Yep. We have 3 different types of sensors. And again, it depends on what the product is, where those sensors will be put in, whether it's commercial or residential. And we do have about an hour and a half course on just the A2L sensors itself. Good
Great
questions.
question.
Yeah, absolutely. Good questions. Love the feedback. What other questions we got, guys and girls? I always get in trouble by not saying girls. There's technicians today are extremely diverse.
How about
Do you know
nail,
the shelf life of those, Floyd? Of those
10 years.
sensors?
Yep,
10
10 years. Yep, 10 years.
how about nail plates on existing systems?
Say that one more time. I apologize. I didn't hear you.
Nail plates on existing systems, change outs?
Again, you're asking a local code question. So whatever your local codes recommend, you need to follow those codes.
So my question is, on the new equipment, are we staying in the physical dimensions of the existing equipment we have now? You were saying that really wasn't anything changing other than the sensors. So our physical size of the equipment is staying the same?
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to see a lot of our equipment even get smaller as far as some of the footprints go. You're going to see with the new platform as A2L rolls out, you're also going to see, as our upper tier starts to grow, you're going to see a little bit more of a mini split type of look on the outdoor unit. So some of the systems are going to physically change as far as what that looks like. Again, that's mid-tier and high-tier products. Of course, we have a universal heat pump that you may or may not have already seen that has a mini split type of look on the outdoor unit. But yeah, there are some really good enhancements and some very good changes that are just right around the corner as far as our product lineup goes.
Got a question here in the chat. With future service, will we be able to replace individual sensors or relays, or is it all one kit? You should be able to you can replace individual sensors and relays.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have a component portion of it through RuudA parts, as well as a accessory package per se. So we'll have
I got a question for Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry, Brandon, I didn't hear the question.
okay. My volume was down. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. So the question is on the little refrigerant sensing relay that goes in the coil, is there going to be time delay with that to prevent compressor short cycle?
So the RDS system, yes. So the relay itself is not going to have a time delay in it, but the outdoor system itself, once it gets interrupted, it's going to automatically go into a 5-minute delay. And it doesn't matter whether it's a builder model or, it will. So if you're talking about straight AC, then straight AC, no, there's nothing outside that's going to prevent it from just kicking on within the first 5 minutes. So there's not going to be a delay on that because there's no logic on that outdoor straight AC only. But if it's heat pump driven, which you guys are in a heat pump market, then anytime that you're going to interrupt that Y signal, it's going to go outside, then you're going to automatically go on that 5-minute delay.
Yeah, I mean, we do quite a bit of condenser. We have a lot of natural gas, so we do quite a bit of condenser. Is that like recommended put a time delay on that, or have these things been tested and they really don't lose their detection within 5 minutes?
Here, let me answer that a different way. So if one of the systems go off, if the RDS, the refrigerant detection system goes off, it's going to take a massive leak that's going to take place in the evaporator coil. And once that happens, then your low pressure switch, more than likely outside, is going to take the system offline. When I was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and we were in the lab and we were doing testing and stuff, you would not imagine how much refrigerant that we had to load that coil up with for the system to actually alarm and start the process to where it shuts the outdoor system off and it purges all of the refrigerant out of the system and it clears it. You would be amazed how much refrigerant that it took to set one of these off. So if you're going to have one of these, the RDS, once it goes off, the system's probably not going to come back online and allow that outdoor unit to come on. I mean, the RDS is not meant to detect small little bitty leaks. It's meant to detect catastrophic leaks. I mean, massive leaks before it's going to go off.
So I guess hypothetically, could I say that we don't wire that thing to kill Y, we wire it to kill R to the thermostat?
No, actually, how it's wired in here, I'll give you a 30,000 foot view of it. So what's going to happen is we're going to break Y going outside, and then we're going to energize G inside to make the system just run in continuous fan mode until that sensor clears.
Right. So, but I couldn't use it to break R to the thermostat because that would turn the thermostat off. And when the thermostat, let's say, came back on within 3 minutes, then it would automatically go into its own 5-minute delay at that point.
Yeah, I got what you're saying. So again, come to the A2L sensor training, and then we'll go over all the details on that.
Works. Thank you.
Very good questions.
Good, yeah, good question, by the way. I'm not trying to brush you off or anything like that. Please don't think that. There's that's a discussion for a different time is what I'm getting at. Because literally, I'd love to spend another hour and a half with you guys to talk about A2L sensors and how they wire in and stuff. But I do like the way that you're thinking. I like that. I like that idea. What other questions we got?
I think we're good.
Is there any projection, which this might not be the right format here, but do we have any clue how much we're looking at on price increases?
That would be a TM question, maybe, or Kevin question.
Yeah, no, we don't have all the pricing in yet. So as soon as we get pricing on all the product and matches, we'll be getting something out to you guys. But no, not really. We don't have an idea yet.
It shouldn't be as bad as the other manufacturers that's going to have to redo all their footprint. So that's one thing RuudA has done is they've done that up front. So
yeah, we took it on the chin when we went from M to M1 product with all of our retooling and all of our redesign and stuff. We decided that we would get ahead of the game, whether that was good or bad in certain individuals' eyes. I think that you'll find that it's good on this side of it now that we're going from the M1 to the A2L. Good questions. Any other questions?
Floyd, one thing that I wanted to say to kind of expound upon the coil only and condenser only matches.
Yes, sir.
So that is a replacement product for the 410A that's currently out there. And it'll be badged just that, replacement or repair only. So, you know, once that product comes out, we'll have that too. So if you get in, and it'll be considered a part. So unlike the change from 22 to 410A, we're going to have a condenser that's considered a part. We'll have a coil that's considered a part. So if you go out in a unit 6 years old and the compressor's dead or the condenser's out, we'll have a replacement condenser you can replace that with, but it'll be just like a part. It'll carry the warranty of a part. It's not AHRI rated. It's just like changing a compressor out. Is that correct, Floyd? Am I saying anything that's out of line on that?
So what I heard is we're specifically talking about 410A, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So my understanding, Kevin, is the replacement component, whether it's a coil or an outdoor unit, there's still some haggling going on between EPA and the DOE in regards to what those rules look like. In the last meeting that I sat in with Jeff Goss and our legal team and so forth. So I'm not really sure where we're at with that, but my understanding is, yes, we're still looking at being able to offer that, provided that the DOE and the EPA doesn't make us jump through a bunch of hurdles to make that happen. So yeah. I'm not really sure where we're at with that.
Yeah, so that's always subject to what the DOE wants to do, because they can change at any time. But that's what's being looked at right now.
Yes, sir. That's what's being looked at right now. It's, trust us. And I'll speak towards, I'll speak to this very loud. We want to, our company really, we, we love change. Don't get me wrong, but we are not the company that dreams up these different rules and regulations and stuff. Sometimes that's kind of out of our hands. I'll find out more though, Kevin. I'll find out some more and I'll get back with you today on that. But yes, we are still looking at that as far as an option.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks, sir.
Very good. Any more questions? On that note, I guess we'll close it off. I appreciate everybody being here. If you got any questions, feel free to call me. I'll answer them as best I can. And I guess I'll see y'all later. Thanks, Floyd, for being on here.
No, thanks, Brian, for the invite. Appreciate it.
All right.
Great turnout, by the way.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.